Sony settings can be tricky. Some of them can even prevent you from saving your photos on your memory card. Some of them can actually cause a blackout and much more. Wrong exposure, wrong autofocus, wrong subject detection. Well, there's so much that can go wrong if you don't set those 10 parameters correctly. I want to save you a lot of trouble. I went through those issues before. I had them happen to me on the field and I don't want them to happen to you. So if you're ready, let's get right into it. So the first thing, a big classic, the one and most important setting that you want to change is obviously your language. Put it in English. No, I'm just joking. I was just making that video in French before. The auto switch media card is the one and most important setting that you want to turn on. By default, it is off. What does it mean? It means that if you fill up your first memory card and you have two in your camera, if you have a A7 IV, A7R 6, for example, what will happen is that it's gonna stop recording photos and it's gonna put you a warning and you won't be able to do anything anymore. So please turn it on. It will save you a lot of missed shots. It happened to me. It happens to me every time I pick up a new camera from Sony and when I forget that they have this off by default, I'm like, why would you do that to us? Now, if you're telling me, well, I only have one memory card because I'm on an A7 C2, I have a CR, and even if you don't, there's another setting right there that is extremely important. Number two is going to go into 7, shutter silent, and you go down to release without card. What does it mean? It means that you can take photos without a memory card inside. By default, it is enabled, which is a terrible idea. Imagine you're here, you're super happy, but you forgot to put a memory card and you start pressing. This will allow you to take photos and you'll think, oh my God, this is great, I'm taking photos, but none of them are gonna be, you see? None of them are gonna be recorded. You can even see the last photo. There's that little warning, no card at the bottom, but damn, like no one told you that nothing was being recorded. So you please press disable right now to avoid that nightmare of going on a shoot and realizing you never recorded anything. It may sound stupid, but honestly, when it happens to you, you feel a lot less stupid. If it has, let me know discreetly in the comments. No one else will read it. Don't worry, because I did it too. I've been there, I've had that issue, and it's not fun. Now, I will say it's a little uncomfortable to have people look at you when you're talking, but it's okay, it's kind of fun. Image quality and rec, I was tired to be in the studio all the time. So if you go to long exposure noise reduction, make sure it is off if you're shooting in RAW. Why? Because shooting in RAW with this will actually increase the time you're taking photos when you're taking long exposure. Let's say you're doing 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds. Your camera is then gonna freeze for 5, 10 seconds, the same amount of time you took the photo, to actually process and reduce the noise. Now, I will recommend you to still leave it off if you wanna avoid taking an exposure that doubles every time. So you take 5 seconds, it takes you 10 seconds to take a photo, and your camera is just like thinking while it's doing it. I recommend you turning that off. Now we're moving to a setting that is extremely important. I started to play with lately, and it really changes your experience of how your camera measures the light, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Go to exposure color metering, AEL with shutter. What does it mean? It's specifically present on the A7 IV, A7R 6, maybe the previous models. It means that when it's off, you'll see what happens is that, let's say I'm taking a photo, right there I want a photo of people on the other side of the crosswalk, right? So there we go. But there's an obstacle passing in front. So I'm in burst and there's an obstacle passing in front, or people, I'm half pressing to focus. What happens is that every time that obstacle passes by, like this car, well, my exposure is going to change because of, you see, there's slight changes of exposures every time there's a dark object that goes in front, but I don't want my exposure to change. Why? Because, well, just because there's a dark car, I don't want to overexpose people in the background. So what you do is you go AEL with shutter, which is auto by default, and you turn it on. So it means that it will lock the exposure with your shutter, and when you half press the shutter. Extremely helpful. Now look, if I have the same scenario and I have an object passing in front, it doesn't change anymore. I can leave it black all the time, completely dark, come back out, it's not changing. That is extremely helpful when you're doing, for example, street photography, you have elements passing in front, or even if you're doing sport photography or wildlife and you have elements going in front of your subject. While we're on the measuring modes, there's the next setting is going to be spot metering point, focus, point link. Let me explain to you in a second what it is, but if you don't know me, my name is Kieti Lambert. I'm a travel adventure photographer and the creator of the 30-day adventure to great photo, a step-by-step method for taking your photography to the next level. Whether you're a beginner, you're experienced, whether you have an expensive camera or cheap camera, this course has helped thousands of students improve their photography and take photos they're proud of. There's a link in the description. Please join me. Don't spend thousands of dollars on gear if you don't invest in your skills a little bit. And on this YouTube channel, I share a lot of tutorials and photography adventure. If you like that, leave it a big thumbs up and subscribe to see the next video. So spot metering point, focus, point link, or center. What does it mean? It means if you go in spot metering, you see that little circle in the middle? That is where your spot metering is going to be done. Spot metering, I have a whole dedicated video on the metering modes, and you can watch this one later if you don't know what I'm talking about. But what I want is basically to have my point, focus point, you see that's moving around, to actually be linked with where the spot metering is happening. I don't want it to be just in the center. Why? Because I want personally to spot meter exactly where I want to be focusing. This is kind of where my subject will be, and this is where I want to do my spot metering. It's something that's extremely helpful, especially if you're trying to do silhouettes, if there's a background that's very bright, or you have dynamic range that is very high, and you want to make sure you're exposing for the right part. And if you've seen what I've done, I was pressing that little AEL button, and there's that little hack where when I press it, it actually, instead of maintaining it to lock the exposure, what I do is I press one, and what it does is that it spot meters, and it stays like this until I press again. So it's a toggle. So if you go in setup at the bottom, and then operation customize, and then the camera, you see the first number one, the AEL button, I changed it from AEL hold, where you had to hold that button to have the auto exposure lock, to AEL toggle with that little center and the square, which is extremely good. And I got that tip because I had the switch already, but it would keep the same exposure mode, metering mode I had by default. But here one of you guys actually commented and suggested I move it to the spot one toggle, and it really is a good idea. It's great and I love it. So thank you for your comments. Please, if you have tips or anything, share them. They're very helpful, not only for me, but for everyone watching. So for the next setting, it's kind of similar to the auto exposure lock, but this is for white balance. So you go to white balance, and here you see something called shutter auto white balance lock. And you can change it from off, shutter half press, or continuous shooting. Same principle. Do you want the camera to block the auto white balance when you're either half pressing your shutter or when you're continuously shooting? Personally, I put it to continuous shooting because I don't care about locking my white balance when I'm half pressing, but I care about locking the white balance the moment I start to take a burst. That is very important for me. I want it to be locked. I don't want inner burst to a small variation of white balance, and this is how you achieve it. You could also leave it to shutter half press, which would, how do you say that, take into account or like apply it to more situations, not just burst. But personally, continuous shooting is enough for me. So I like to move it to continuous shooting, and that is good. So the white balance doesn't change across the frame. So if you've looked at my screen, I spend 95% of my time using that small focus point. I love small focus point areas, or like small zones that I can control. But there is a problem. By default, when you're using subject detection, even if you have a small focus area, if your camera picks up subject in the camera, in the frame, it will actually focus on them even if they're far. You see, my autofocus point is here, and the camera literally like went and did the autofocus on the person behind. But that's way too far from my focus area. So what I do is I go in my settings here, recognition target, and I go, you can press, actually nothing tells you, but here you see, you can press to the right and go into human, and here you change the tracking shift range from wide or standard to all the way down to narrow, which means the hitbox for the autofocus will be a lot smaller. It will try to stay constrained to your autofocus area and not take it around. And honestly, I don't know why by default it's that wide, but again, for cars also, I go back to narrow. You can do the same for animals, for birds, insects, all of them one by one if you want. But look at this. Now, even if it sees a person in the frame, it's not gonna take it unless you see the head is literally in the hitbox. If I go a little below, it's not gonna take the person. You see if it sees her, but the moment I go on that person, it's gonna grab it. Same with the cars, so I can go at the bottom and up, or I can go here. Let's see, the car is a little far, but here you see the car. Now I recognize it, but if I go below, I can take the photo safely without it picking up the car. So it keeps you being very intentional. Photography is all about intentionality and being, like sure of what you're doing, having an idea and really going for it, and making sure the camera is not getting in the way of actually creating that image. So here for me, with any focus area, if my camera is autofocusing on a subject that is outside that autofocus area, that's a trouble. So I reduce it to narrow, and it keeps my experience a lot more intentional. Next, we're gonna talk about a setting that will save you from actually having a dirty sensor. Okay, so you see your sensor, when you turn it off by default, stays open, right? Nothing protects it. Canon does it differently. It protects by default with the shutter. So in Sony, you actually have to activate it. So you go all the way down to your setup option, and you see anti-dust function. You go to shutter when power is off, and you turn it from off to on. And now, okay, you press OK, you have a little warning, because apparently the Sony team, they told me that a lot of people actually put their fingers on the shutter when it is being turned off. So you see, when your camera is off, you have the shutter. Don't press on it, that's gonna damage it. Do not touch it, but it protects from the dust when you're changing your lens. When you turn back your camera, it opens up and avoids kind of all that dust coming in. Very, very helpful tip, very helpful setting, 100% recommended to you. If you have a 7R6, by the way, this is where your illumination settings for your back panel and rec lamp settings are. And yeah, I just wanted to say it, it's pretty cool. Now, moving on to something that also will improve your experience of the camera is going to be monitor low brightness. I don't know if you can see it properly, but what happens by default, either it's very low. What does it mean? It means that monitor low brightness, you see your screen starts to lag a little bit. You see it starts to be slower. Why? And there's less luminosity because it's kind of a power saving mode. But the problem is that to have it wake up every time, you have to half press. So let's say you're in a situation, you're taking shots, and then after 5 seconds you don't, and then you see a situation and the screen is slow, is lagging, and it's lower brightness. It's actually very disturbing. So you can turn that off, or you can simply put it to 25 seconds. That I found was helpful enough, 25 seconds for me to have time. 25 seconds is a good time. If I haven't shot or tried anything 25 seconds, that means I should probably be in power saving mode. But you can increase it if you want, and it will make your experience of the camera, and when you raise your camera, it won't feel that it's slow and your brightness is completely reduced. While we're at it, I recommend also going to the auto power off temperature and set it to a high so that your camera does not turn off if your camera is hot. It will go higher. And yes, you say okay for the little warning. And then the little next one that is also very important is going to go in the finer monitor display quality and change it from standard by default to high in order to basically have the best refreshing rate and the best quality when you're looking at the back of your screen. Highly recommend changing that. Now, if you have one of the latest camera, you've probably noticed when you turn your camera sideways, so portrait mode, the information changes, which can be a little bit distracting for me because suddenly I'm looking for my shutter speed and ISO on that long bar and suddenly it's at the bottom. It can be very helpful if you're always shooting vertical and you want to keep it that way, but if you're switching like me a lot between portrait and landscape, you can simply go to finer monitor and then at the lowest setting, The last one is vertical display, and you turn it off. I personally turn it off instantly on all the new cameras because I want my display to stay basically in landscape mode, the information, even when I'm vertical. Why? Because I have the reference point of where the information should be. It's not switching suddenly, and that keeps it very, again, you're more proactive on the field, you're more reactive. Not proactive, you're more reactive on the field, and it's more constant. You know what you're doing easily. All right, I got a last one for you, but let me know which one of these has been surprising to you, which one did you not know, which one do you think I should be covering? Because the last one is something that is especially important if you own an R6, if you own an A7 IV, or even the A1 II. Actually, A1 II has something really cool. But here we end up having pre-capture modes, right? Or we end up having 30 frames per second burst, or needing shutter silence, right? Silent shutters. But the problem is that you have to always go into your menu to change your shutter from your mechanical shutter to electronic shutter. And to me, it's too much to do it to go in the menu. So what I do is I go to the setups and operation customize, and I customize my function menu to add the shutter right there, the shutter type, so that easily I can change from electronic to mechanical shutter. So if I need to go higher burst, I change it to electronic shutter. If I actually don't want electronic shutter because of artifacts, because of light interferences, etc., I can go in mechanical shutter. By the way, try to stay in mechanical shutter like 99% of the time. It's so much more helpful. But by having that switch very quickly, it's cool. If you need to go to pre-capture, you can do it very quickly. And I also put the pre-capture into my function menu right there in order to switch it very fast when I'm shooting. Very important to actually create an experience with your camera that will be swift and very efficient, so that on the field you're not missing photos, you're not fumbling around on how to use it. Now, if you're curious about camera settings I used on the field, make sure you grab my free photography cheat sheet. There is a link in the description. And if you want to learn more about my BBF, the back button focus, how I use it, why I change the shutter half press and I keep it just at the back, watch this video. And if you want to dig further into your exposure modes and the metering, watch this video. Now remember, get out there, go shoot, try something different, and try something new. Before you invest in gear, invest in your skills, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.